They threw her in free with 2 horses. An emotional Western love story. The dust rose thick and choking over the auction yard, curling into the late afternoon sun like smoke from a dying fire. Jacob Hale stood near the back rail, his hat pulled low, his hands rough and cracked from years of honest work. He hadn't planned on staying long. He barely had enough money in his pocket to bid on a mule, let alone anything else. But something in the air had made him pause. The auctioneer's voice cracked through the yard. Next lot, 2 horses, no papers, no questions. A few men laughed. Jacob leaned forward. 2 horses were dragged into the ring, strong, frightened, their hides dusty and scarred. But that wasn't what made the crowd go silent. It was the woman tied between them. Her wrists were bound with rope, her boots barely touching the ground as the horses shifted nervously. Her dress was torn at the hem, dust-stained, and too thin for the coming winter. Dark hair fell loose around her face, and one side of her cheek was bruised deep purple. She looked up, not at the auctioneer, not at the crowd, at Jacob, and in that single glance, something ancient and heavy settled into his chest. "Don't want her," the auctioneer said with a grin that carried no humor. "She comes free with the horses." Laughter rippled again, meaner this time. Jacob's jaw tightened. He'd seen cruelty before. Frontier towns were built on it. But this was different. "Any bids?" the auctioneer shouted. 2 horses. Woman's just extra weight. The woman stumbled as one horse jerked forward. She didn't cry out. She didn't beg. She just stood there, silent, proud, like she'd already survived worse. Jacob's hand clenched the rail. He didn't know her name. Didn't know her story. Didn't know why she was here. All he knew was this. If he walked away now, he'd never forgive himself. $10, someone shouted lazily. Jacob swallowed hard. That was half of what he had. 10. The auctioneer echoed. Anyone else? Jacob's heart hammered. He thought of his failing ranch. The dry creek bed. The cattle he'd already lost. Then he looked back at her eyes. Clear, defiant, unbroken. 15, Jacob said. The word surprised even him. Heads turned. The auctioneer raised a brow. 15 going once. A pause. No one else spoke. Going twice. The woman closed her eyes, like she didn't dare hope. Sold. The gavel slammed down. Jacob exhaled shakily. He'd just bought 2 horses he couldn't afford, and a woman who looked like trouble, grief, and fate all tangled into one. They cut the ropes roughly and shoved her toward him. "Your problem now," one man sneered. Jacob stepped forward, instinctively placing himself between her and the crowd. "You all right?" he asked quietly. She hesitated, then nodded. "Yes," she said. Her voice was hoarse but steady. "I will be." Something about the way she said it made him believe her. He handed her his canteen. She drank slowly, like someone who knew what it meant to ration hope. "What's your name?" Jacob asked. She met his gaze again. "Clara." The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the yard. Jacob didn't know it yet, but that single moment, that one quiet decision, would cost him everything he had. And give him something worth far more than land, cattle, or gold. Dust, silence, and the weight of the past. Jacob led the horses out of the auction yard without looking back. He could feel the eyes on them, judging, mocking, curious, but he kept his shoulders straight and his pace steady. Pride was sometimes the only thing a man had left. Clara walked beside him, her steps careful but determined. One hand rested lightly on the saddle horn of the nearer horse, as if touching it reminded her she was still real. Still free. They didn't speak until the town was behind them. The road stretched narrow and pale through dry hills, wind scraping against the earth like it was searching for something lost long ago. Jacob slowed his horse and finally looked at her. "You don't have to come with me," he said. "Nearest town's about 6 miles east. I can point the way." Clara stopped. No, she said softly. I'm done running in circles. Jacob studied her face, bruised, exhausted, but stubborn in a way he recognized. It was the look of someone who had learned the hard way that the world didn't hand out mercy. My ranch is north, he said after a moment. It ain't much. Roof leaks. Water's low. That's more than I had this morning, she replied. For the first time, something like a smile touched her lips. By the time they reached the ranch, the sun was bleeding into the horizon. Jacob's land sat quiet and tired, a small house leaning into the wind, fences sagging like old men with too many regrets. The corral held only dust and one half-broken gate. Clara took it all in. You live alone? She asked. Been that way a while. She nodded. No pity. No questions. Jacob unsaddled the horses while Clara stood nearby, unsure where to put herself, like a guest who hadn't been invited but hoped she might be allowed to stay. There's water inside, he said. And bread. Ain't fresh, but it'll do. She hesitated, then stepped into the house. Inside, the air smelled of wood, leather, and loneliness. A single table, 2 chairs, a narrow bed pushed against the wall. Clara set herself carefully on one chair, hands folded in her lap. Why did you do it? She asked. Jacob paused. Do what? Bid on me. The word hung heavy between them. Jacob rubbed a hand over his beard. Didn't see it that way. But you knew, she said gently. You knew what would have happened if you hadn't. He met her eyes. Yes, he said simply. Silence followed, not awkward, but full. Finally, Clara spoke again. They said I belong to my husband, she said. Said a woman without a man is property waiting to be claimed. Jacob's jaw tightened. He was drunk most nights, she continued. Mean on the others, worse on me. When he died, his brothers decided I was part of the debt. Her voice didn't break. That scared Jacob more than if it had. They dragged me to the auction, she said. Told me I was lucky. At least I'd get horses. Jacob clenched his fists. No one owns you, he said quietly. Clara looked at him for a long moment. You're the first man to say that to me, she replied. That night, the wind howled outside, rattling the walls like ghosts demanding entry. Jacob lay awake on the floor, blanket pulled tight, listening to Clara's breathing from the bed. Slow, uneven, like someone still learning how to rest. Images from the auction burned behind his eyes. He hadn't saved her out of courage. He'd done it because, once upon a time, no one had saved him either. Morning came sharp and cold. Clara was already outside when Jacob stepped out, brushing one of the horses with careful strokes, murmuring softly like the animal could understand her pain. You know horses, Jacob said. She nodded. My father taught me. Before everything went wrong. Jacob leaned against the fence. You can stay, he said. As long as you need. She turned to him, eyes shining, not with tears, but with resolve. Then I'll work, she said. I won't be a burden. Jacob almost smiled. Before he could answer, a distant sound cut through the air. Hooves. More than one rider. Clara stiffened. They'll come looking, she said. Men like that don't lose what they think belongs to them. Jacob followed her gaze toward the horizon, where dust rose faint and threatening. Then they picked the wrong ranch, he said. The wind carried the promise of trouble. And neither of them knew yet that the past wasn't finished with Clara, or that protecting her would cost Jacob more than land, more than money. Possibly his life. Men who believe they own the world. The riders reached the ranch just after noon. Jacob saw them first. 3 men on dark horses, moving slow, confident, like the land itself belonged to them. Dust clung to their boots, and each carried the same look, the kind that came from a lifetime of taking without asking. Clara froze beside the well. Her hand tightened around the bucket rope. They're his brothers, she whispered. Ethan, Luke, and the tall one's Caleb. Jacob stepped forward, placing himself between Clara and the open yard. "Go inside," he said. Clara didn't argue. She backed away slowly, eyes never leaving the men. The riders pulled up near the corral. Ethan dismounted first, grinning like he'd already won. "Well, I'll be damned," he said. "Thought we lost you, girl." Jacob didn't move. "This is private land," he said. "Turn around." Luke laughed. "You buy 2 horses and think you bought a wife too." Jacob's hand rested near his belt, not on a gun, just there. "A warning. She stays," he said. Caleb finally spoke. His voice was low, measured. "Dangerous. You don't know what you bought," he said. "That woman belongs to our family. Our brother's debt." Clara stepped back outside then, chin lifted despite the fear burning in her eyes. "I don't belong to anyone," she said. "Not anymore." Ethan turned, anger flashing. "You don't get to decide that." Jacob took one step forward. "She already did." The air went tight. For a second, Jacob thought blood would spill right there in the dust. Then Caleb raised a hand. "Easy," he said. "We ain't here to make trouble. Just here to collect what's ours." He looked at Jacob. "Last chance. Hand her over." Jacob didn't hesitate. "No." The word landed heavy. Caleb's eyes darkened. "Then this ranch is as good as dead." The brothers mounted up. "This ain't over," Ethan called back. "We'll be back. And next time, we won't ask." They rode off, dust swallowing their threat. Clara's knees nearly gave out once they were gone. Jacob caught her before she fell. "You should have let them take me," she said, voice shaking. "They'll destroy you." Jacob shook his head. "They already tried." She looked at him, confused. "My land's been failing for years," he said quietly. "Drought. Bad deals. Bad luck. Men like them don't scare me." Clara swallowed. "I've never had anyone stand between me and danger before." Jacob met her gaze. "Get used to it." That night, Clara couldn't sleep. Neither could Jacob. The fire burned low between them, shadows dancing across the walls. Outside, coyotes howled like the world itself was warning them. "I should leave," Clara said suddenly. "Before I ruin you." Jacob stared into the flames. "You didn't ruin me," he said. "You reminded me why I kept going." She turned to him, startled. "For years," he continued, "this place felt like a grave. Then you showed up, and suddenly it's alive again." Her breath caught. The space between them shrank, not by movement, but by truth. "I don't want to be afraid anymore," she said. Jacob reached out, stopping just short of touching her hand. "Then don't be," he said. "Not here." She placed her hand over his. The contact was gentle, electric. Neither of them pulled away. Days passed with tension hanging like a storm cloud. They worked side by side, fixing fences, rationing water, moving cattle that barely existed anymore. Clara proved stronger than she looked, smarter too. She saw solutions where Jacob had only seen endings. "You could dig a deeper well," she suggested one evening. "There's water under this land. I can feel it." Jacob almost laughed. "You sound sure." She smiled faintly. "I am." He realized then, she wasn't just surviving. She was planning a future. And that scared him more than any threat. The attack came at dawn. A gunshot shattered the quiet. Wood splintered. Clara screamed. Jacob rolled out of bed, heart pounding. Men were on the property. And this time, they hadn't come to talk. When blood is the price of freedom. The second gunshot shattered the front window. Glass exploded inward as Jacob shoved Clara to the floor. Wood splinters rained down, and the horses screamed from the corral, panic tearing through the morning air. "Stay down," Jacob shouted. Boots thundered outside. Ethan's voice cut through the chaos. "Come out, Hale. We're done being patient." Jacob crawled to the wall, heart hammering, every instinct screaming danger. He grabbed his rifle from its hooks, hands steady despite the storm in his chest. Clara's breath came fast. "They'll kill you." Jacob glanced back at her. Not today. The door burst open. Luke charged first. Jacob fired. The shot hit Luke in the shoulder, spinning him into the dirt with a scream. Before Jacob could react, another blast roared from the side. Pain exploded across his ribs. Jacob went down hard. Jacob! Clara screamed. Blood soaked his shirt as he struggled to breathe. The world tilted, sounds muffled, like he was sinking underwater. Ethan laughed. Should have taken the money, cowboy. Clara moved before she thought. She grabbed the iron poker from beside the fire and ran straight at Ethan, rage burning brighter than fear. He turned too late. The poker cracked against his skull. Ethan went down. Caleb stepped out of the dust then, calm, deadly, revolver already raised. Enough, he said. Clara stood between Caleb and Jacob, chest heaving, hands shaking but firm. You'll have to kill me first, she said. Caleb studied her. You ain't worth the trouble. He fired, not at her. At the corral. Flames leapt as the lantern shattered. Fire spread fast. You take her, Caleb called to Ethan as he mounted up. I'll handle the ranch. Jacob forced himself up, vision blurring. Run, Clara. She didn't. She grabbed Jacob, half dragging him toward the well as smoke swallowed the yard. Caleb fired again. The bullet grazed Jacob's arm. They fell behind the stone wall just as the house caught. Fire roared, hungry and merciless. Clara pressed her hands against Jacob's wound, tears streaming freely now. Stay with me, she begged. Please. Jacob looked at her through the smoke and pain. I ain't done yet, he said hoarsely. Not with you here. Sirens, no, hooves, approached in the distance. Caleb cursed. He and Ethan fled, dragging Luke between them. The fire kept burning. Hours later, nothing remained but blackened wood and silence. Jacob lay on the ground, pale, barely conscious. Clara sat beside him, holding his hand like it was the only thing keeping him alive. I won't let them win, she whispered. Not you, not us. Jacob's eyes fluttered open. Us, he murmured. She smiled through tears. Yes, us. They survived. But the ranch was gone. Everything Jacob had built, gone. As night fell over the ruins, Clara helped him sit up. We'll start again, she said. Somewhere safe. Jacob looked at the ashes. Then at her. I don't care where, he said. As long as you're there. She leaned into him, forehead resting against his. For the first time in her life, Clara felt something she'd never known before. Home, where broken things begin again. They left before sunrise. What was left of the ranch smoldered behind them, smoke curling into the pale sky like a farewell that burned too long. Jacob rode slowly, every movement pulling pain from his ribs. Clara walked beside him, refusing to leave his side even when he told her to rest. We'll reach Red Willow by nightfall, Jacob said. There's a doctor there, old friend. Clara nodded. You'll make it, she didn't say or else. She didn't need to. By midday, Jacob was shaking. They stopped near a stand of cottonwoods where a thin stream cut through the land like a miracle. Clara helped him down, cleaned his wounds with steady hands, her touch gentle but sure. You've done this before, Jacob said weakly. She swallowed. Too many times. When she finished, she sat back on her heels, staring at the blood on her hands. My husband didn't die quick, she said suddenly. The night he did, he came home drunk. Angry. I fought back. Jacob stiffened. He hit his head, she continued. On the hearth. He never woke up. She looked at Jacob then, eyes searching his face for judgment. They said I murdered him. Jacob reached for her hand. They were wrong. Her breath hitched. I didn't cry for him, she whispered. I cried because I thought that made me a monster. Jacob pulled her close, careful of his injuries. You survived, he said. That's not evil. That's strength. For the first time, Clara let herself cry, real, shaking sobs that had been waiting years to escape. Jacob held her until the tears ran out. They reached Red Willow after dark. The doctor stitched Jacob's wounds and shook his head. "You're stubborn," he said. "That's what saved you." They found a small room above the stable. Just one bed. Jacob hesitated. "I can take the floor." Clara shook her head. "No more running. No more pretending." She lay beside him, fully clothed, careful not to hurt him. The space between them was small, charged with things neither dared name. "You ever think about leaving all this behind?" she asked. "Every day," he answered. "What stopped you?" He was quiet a long time. "My brother," he said. "He went chasing gold. Never came back. I stayed because someone had to keep a place for him, in case he did." Clara turned toward him. "And now," Jacob looked at her, "now I think I was waiting for you." Her heart pounded. She leaned in slowly, giving him time to pull away. He didn't. Their kiss was soft, uncertain, and full of promise, like something fragile finally given air. Morning brought news. Caleb and Ethan had been seen nearby, asking questions, offering money. "They won't stop," Clara said. Jacob nodded. "Then we end it." That night, they made a plan, not of revenge, but of truth. Evidence. Witnesses. The auctioneer. The doctor. The town that had looked away. "We face them in the open," Clara said. "No more shadows." Jacob squeezed her hand. Together. As they stood on the balcony, watching the town lights flicker, Clara realized something had changed. She wasn't being protected anymore. She was standing beside someone, equal, unafraid. And for the first time in her life, she wasn't just surviving. She was choosing. When the whole town finally looks. The town square of Red Willow had never been so full. Men leaned against hitching posts. Women stood in doorways, hands clasped tight. Whispers passed like wind through dry grass. Word had spread fast. About the fire, the shooting, the woman who had been sold like property and dared to stand up. Clara stood beside Jacob on the courthouse steps. Her hands trembled, but she didn't pull away when Jacob laced his fingers through hers. Caleb arrived last. He dismounted slow, calm as ever, a half smile on his face like this was all some inconvenience. Ethan followed, bruised and bitter. Luke walked stiffly, arms still bound. "You really going to put on a show?" Caleb asked. The sheriff stepped forward. "You'll mind your tone." Caleb raised his hands. "Just here to clear up a misunderstanding." The judge took his seat. And the town finally listened. The auctioneer spoke first. Sweat ran down his face as he admitted what everyone had known and no one had said, that Clara had been sold illegally, that threats had been made, that silence had been cheaper than justice. Next came the doctor. "She didn't kill her husband," he said plainly. "The injuries match an accident during a violent struggle." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Clara stepped forward then. Her voice shook at first, but it didn't break. "I was beaten. I was threatened. I was sold," she said. "And every man who watched it happen helped them do it." The words landed like thunder. Caleb's smile faded. Jacob spoke last. "They burned my ranch to take what they thought they owned," he said. "I won't be quiet about it." Caleb laughed. "You got no proof." The sheriff held up a ledger. "Names, payments, bribes." "Actually," he said, "we do." Caleb's face hardened. This was no longer a game. When the verdict came, it felt unreal. "Guilty. On all counts." Ethan shouted. Luke wept. Caleb said nothing as the shackles closed around his wrists. As they were led away, Caleb looked back at Clara. "This ain't the end," he said softly. Clara met his stare. "For you," she replied, "it is." Outside, the crowd stood silent. Then someone clapped. Then another. Until the sound filled the square. Not celebration, acknowledgement. The town had failed her once. It wouldn't again. That night, Jacob and Clara walked alone beneath the stars. "You could leave," Jacob said quietly. "Start somewhere new. Somewhere safe." Clara stopped him. I already am safe, she said. With you. He pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. I don't know how to rebuild, he admitted. She smiled. We'll learn. They kissed. This time without fear. But as they turned back toward the stable, a shadow moved at the edge of the street. A man watching, waiting. The past, wounded and humiliated, was not done bleeding yet. Freedom is a place we choose. The shot rang out just before dawn. Jacob woke to the sound and rolled from the bed, instinct sharp despite the ache still living in his bones. Clara was already up, pulling on her boots, eyes fierce. That was close, she said. Too close. They ran outside. A rider tore through the far end of town, disappearing into the morning fog. On the stable door, buried deep in the wood, was a knife. A message. Jacob pulled it free. This ends today, he said. They tracked him beyond Red Willow, into the open land where lies couldn't hide and fear had nowhere to run. Caleb waited near a dry ravine, horse restless, eyes burning with something broken and desperate. You took everything from me, he said. Clara stepped forward. You never owned it. Caleb raised his gun, then hesitated. For the first time, he looked unsure. Jacob didn't draw. He spoke. This land's done with blood, Jacob said. So are we. Caleb's hand shook. Years of power, slipping away. He fired. The bullet missed. Clara grabbed the gun from his hand as Jacob tackled him to the ground. The fight was quick, ugly, final. Caleb lay still, defeated, not dead. Sheriff's men arrived moments later. As Caleb was dragged away, Clara watched him go, not with anger, but with relief. They left Red Willow a week later. Not running, choosing. They found land near a river, rich and quiet, where the soil held promise and the wind didn't carry ghosts. They built together. A house. A life. Some nights, Clara still woke from dreams. Some days, Jacob still felt the weight of what he'd lost. But they faced it side by side. On a clear morning, Jacob took Clara's hands. I ain't got much, he said. But I'll give you every day I have. She smiled, the kind of smile that came from knowing exactly who you were and choosing anyway. I don't need saving, she said. I choose you. They kissed as the river moved steady beside them. Years later, people told stories. About a woman who was sold, like property and stood up anyway. About a man who lost everything and found something better. About love that didn't rescue, but respected. And if you rode past that ranch at sunset, you'd see two horses in the field. Free. Together. This story touched your heart. Don't let it end here. Subscribe for more stories that heal broken souls.